What's up guys, Readiness Reviews, here with you again. As you may know, I recently got in my order from the Hunter's Lodge. One of the rifles included in that order was this British No.4 Mk.1 Lee-Enfield from World War II. And this thing is in absolutely terrible condition. Probably the worst condition rifle in my collection at the moment. It is completely covered in a thick tarry substance. Pieces of the stock are broken. Pieces of the stock are missing. We're missing all kinds of parts, but there is one redeeming quality for this particular rifle. This rifle, surprisingly enough, has a absolutely fantastic 2-groove rifled bore that I think is worth getting back to the shooting range. This will be what will most likely end up being the first video in a saga of videos trying to bring this No.4 rifle back to life. But before we make any further investments into this particular rifle, I think we need to get in there, diagnose all the issues, see exactly what's going on and what needs to be replaced to figure out if it's even financially viable to restore this seemingly battlefield pickup condition No.4. So before we get this over to the desk to take a closer look, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you're into military surplus firearm videos on YouTube, and to subscribe to the channel to catch all of my future military surplus videos, including firearms restoration videos. Now let's get this over to the desk and tear it down. So here is our very sad No.4 Enfield from the Hunter's Lodge. For reference, I have my very handsomely restored No.4 Enfield from Royal Tiger Imports. If you want to see more on this rifle, I'll link to the restoration video of it. It required some work as well, but not nearly as much work as the one we're taking a look at today. So I guess we'll go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room first, and that's what the heck is on this stock. It's almost completely covered with a very thick black tar-like substance. You can see the wood underneath in several spots. And then there's some places like this where that tar is very thick. I've never really seen anything like this before. I suspect that it is cosmoline, that the whole rifle was essentially dunked in cosmoline, but for some reason, that cosmoline is no longer really sticky. Of course, it's stuck to the rifle, but it doesn't really come off on your hands. And usually when you have a thick layer of cosmoline on something, you expect it to get pretty much everywhere and be extremely sticky. I think this is really old cosmoline that has possibly been exposed to some heat in the past, and it sort of oxidized and basically hardened all over the stock and metal surfaces of the rifle. We know for a fact that this buttstock is going to have to go. So this is what a No.4 buttstock should look like. For one, it should have a butt plate. This one does not have a butt plate. And it should have this sort of inward curving radius that the butt plate fits into. Well, the rifle we're looking at here actually curves outwards. The corners are all pounded round. That leads me to believe that this rifle was used for quite a while with no butt plate installed, and that's why it's all pounded flat. It's almost like someone used this as a hammer to pound fence posts into the ground, or who knows what. No idea there. But the buttstock certainly has to go, because there's no way we would be able to just put a butt plate on this and it work. It also has a fairly substantial toe crack there. A No.4 buttstock should have a partial pistol grip, just like my RTI No.4 right here. This one has no partial pistol grip. So at some point, this was sporterized or modified by someone to have just a slick wrist with no partial pistol grip. That was an odd choice. Very interesting. Unfortunately, I don't think this stock is ever going to do anyone any good, so it will be getting replaced for sure. Moving up the rifle, we can very clearly see that we are missing our rear handguard here. It's just completely gone. The barrel band is intact, but it's not placed in the correct position. Someone has cranked it down on the top handguard. You can see this sort of rivet here is behind the barrel band. That rivet should be in front of the barrel band. And since that handguard's moved back further than it should be, our nose cap doesn't really line up to where it's supposed to behind the rear sight. That gap there is not supposed to be like that. This piece of metal is supposed to roughly be flush with this piece of metal, just like it is here. We are completely missing our front sight protector and the front sight blade. Luckily, those are fairly inexpensive pieces to replace on a No.4 Enfield. This sling loop is just laughable in its condition, but it's definitely not supposed to be like that. This has the non-adjustable flip aperture rear sight. There should be 2 apertures on this rear sight. The larger aperture has been broken off, and we're left with only the small peep. So that may or may not be a piece that I replace. It depends on how it shoots. Our bolt is a mess. For one, it's missing the bolt head, and that piece is a little bit important to getting a rifle up and running. The firing pin should also not look like that. It appears that the end of the firing pin has been broken off. Luckily, we do have our cocking piece with the retaining screw. We'll be disassembling that here in a bit to see if it actually has a spring, but at the very least, we're going to need to replace the bolt head and the firing pin. This magazine is just a magazine body. All the internals are gone. Compared to my functional number 4 there, you can see the follower is missing. Sourcing a whole replacement magazine may be easier than just finding the internal components for this one. It will just depend on what the market bears. It's missing all kinds of small pieces. The safety assembly is completely missing. It's even missing this little screw right here. Let's get down to business and see what's going on under the wood line. This screw head is all gunked up with rust, and that substance that I believe is cosmoline is crusty and rusty, but it's coming loose. There's what's left of our sling loop, barrel bend screw, and really rough condition rusted out barrel band. Look at that thick layer of rust behind where the barrel band was. You can also see that cosmoline substance where it sort of pulled up along the side of the barrel band there. The screw head on this front nose cap is barely even visible. Got to sort of clean it out before we start trying to loosen it. That one turned very easily. I appreciate that. Slide that band off. It's ugly, but should be functional enough. And off with the handguard. Oh man, look at that rust there. I hope that didn't turn into lots of pitting on the barrel. The underlying metal of the barrel doesn't look too bad. A lot of the bluing is gone. Unless this is heavily pitted, I think our barrel is going to be very salvageable. But I am talking out of turn just a little bit. We need to check the underside as well. So we need to remove the trigger guard. All these screws are coming out very easily. I'm happy that we're not dealing with rusted shut screws. I think these number 4s are leftovers from Springfield Sporters, and I believe they sort of sat around in Springfield Sporter inventory for a long time and were harvested as parts guns. That's all speculation on my part. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if I had to guess how this rifle made its way to Hunter's Lodge, I would say it crossed through Springfield Sporters at some point. I know they had a lot of rifles in similar condition to this one. All right, let's take our fore end off. This is one of the most expensive parts on an Enfield to replace, so I really hope that it is in salvageable condition, because if it's not, it will greatly increase the cost of this project. It's very dusty and dirty on the inside. I see a crack, but I don't know how serious that crack is. We also have a little crack on the rear end here, but luckily that's held together by the reinforcing bolt on the rear end, so that shouldn't be a big issue. I'm a little more concerned with this line we can see running through here. It runs a fair distance down the sidewall of the fore end. You can actually see it breaks all the way through. It's on the outside of the rifle as well. Before we can really find out if that's going to be repairable or if it even needs to be repaired, we'll have to get this forearm nice and clean, and I intend to do that using the easy off oven cleaner method that I have demonstrated previously. I usually stray away from using the easy off, but when you run into a situation like this where it is just so completely dirty and needs a full restoration, I will resort to using easy off because it saves me time and labor. It does appear that the inside was spared from whatever kind of substance is on the outside, whether that be cosmoline or tar. It didn't really get down on the inside too much. There's no bluing to speak of. The metal's kind of shiny. We do have a lot of thick, crusty rust to deal with, but as long as the receiver isn't bent in any way, I see no reason that it wouldn't be completely functional. It does have all the parts necessary for function: the sear, trigger spring, which is also the magazine release spring, and it actually has the little bolt retention tab that appears to be functional. The metal ring here that holds the rear handguard in place is all bent up and mangled. That's a part I can replace, or I can try my best at straightening it out, and that's probably what I'll do to save money. Now let's get into the bolt and see what it's missing. This is an Enfield bolt disassembly tool. If you're going to be working on any number of Enfields, I definitely recommend getting one of these, and it is really tight. I finally broke it loose. So there is our broken firing pin. It's missing at least a ½ inch off the end, I would say. But we do have a nice condition firing pin spring, and nothing seems to be wrong with the bolt body or the cocking piece. So I'm sure people are curious about this, because to be honest, I'm pretty curious to see how this substance on the outside of the rifle reacts to heat, and that'll give us a better idea as to whether or not it is indeed cosmoline, which is my number 1 theory. So before I take the easy off oven cleaner to this, we're gonna give it a little heat gun treatment and see how it reacts. That certainly looks like it's melting to me. Oh yeah, look at that. It's bubbling up and starting to flow. Wipe some of this off. Yep, and it's just straight wood underneath. So I'm going to conclude that this black tar on the outside of the rifle is just cosmoline. I'm not about to go over the whole stock doing that though. The easy off is just so much easier to get the cosmoline off. So for a rundown of what replacement parts we absolutely need to obtain for this one, we need a bolt head, which will need to include the ejector spring, and the ejector screw. We need a buttstock and butt plate. We need magazine internals or a complete magazine. We need a rear handguard. Most definitely have to have a front sight, and I would like to have the front sight protector. And we'll need to replace a little screw on the side of the receiver here, which I think is like an ejector screw or something like that. I'm actually not sure what that part does, along with the safety assembly. While all those parts together will definitely add up to not be an insignificant number in terms of cost, it shouldn't be too terribly expensive to replace all the parts that need to be replaced, unless we have to start looking at replacing this forestock, in which case we would have to go way over the budget I would like to allocate for this particular rifle. This is a look at the wood after 3 applications of Easy Off oven cleaner and a scrub down with hot water and Dawn dishwashing liquid. A lot of the crud is gone, but there's still a lot left, and it's very dark, basically black. And that's led me to the conclusion that this rifle was not only slathered with cosmoline, but I believe it was also painted black. And I think that's what the coating was on this, a mix of black paint and cosmoline. So I'm sure it's going to take at least another application or 2 of oven cleaner and another good scrubbing to get all this residual black paint off. The grain structure of the wood is also extremely coarse, which is a little odd. Maybe that's what prompted them to paint it in the first place, because the wood was really ugly. Who knows? But I did want to show you guys this crack a little better. Now that I've cleaned it up, you can tell that if we apply pressure on it, it moves, and it opens up a good deal right there. It runs all the way through the midpoint of the forestock, and then it kind of stops shortly after the separation between the front handguard and the rear handguard. I'm actually not sure what the best way to attack repairing that is going to be. I'm guessing that that crack continues to run under this nose cap, so perhaps we drift the nose cap off, open the crack all the way up, acrid glass it, clamp it, and then maybe reinforce that by drilling a few little pilot holes and inserting some very small screws into the bottom side of the forestock. But that will be for a future video. If you guys have any good ideas on the best way of tackling a crack like that, make sure you let me know down in the comments. I don't see this causing this forestock to not be salvageable though. I do think we will be able to reuse it even if the crack remains unrepaired. This would still function as it should. Now that I know what I need, I'm going to start trying to source parts to see what we're going to be looking like in terms of cost. Before I'm comfortable putting any more money into it though, I want to get the barreled action all cleaned up, make sure it functions properly. I may even install this barreled action into this rifle just to see if it shoots. So I hope you guys join me on that voyage of discovery and learning and rehabilitating very sad military surplus rifles. Let me know down in the comments if you think this is a complete piece of junk, waste of time and waste of money to get it back up and running again. Or if you're like me and you think that there's a decent chance that this one might actually be worth restoring, especially with as nice as the bore is. If you're considering picking up one of these Enfields from Hunter's Lodge, consider this video a warning that this is the kind of condition that you can expect for that kind of monetary investment. For a rifle that comes in at about $200, I do think that these are a little expensive for what you're actually getting. But if you're looking for a project and you got a few extra bucks to throw around, who knows? It might be worth the chance. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, which will help me out with the Google algorithm and getting this video out to more viewers. Make sure you subscribe to see all subsequent content on the subject. Be looking for a update video sooner rather than later, and that may come in the form of one of my bi-weekly Milsurp Minute videos. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will catch you in the next video. See you then. Peace.